Graduated, elevated, now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Graduated, elevated, now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Major moves, power moves.
Welcome to PhD Hard Talk. My name is Noma Mguni, and thank you so much, Prash, for being a guest again. Could you please introduce yourself, your research, what you're up to now? Because it's been a minute.
Thank you, Nova, and thank you so much for having me again. I was here last year, and the videos have been really well received. I got a lot of congratulatory messages from colleagues and my supervisors, and a number of people who have really enjoyed the interaction you and I came up with as well. So for those who are joining us for the first time who have probably not seen the earlier videos, I am from Fiji. I'm actually Prashneel Goundar, and I finished my PhD at the University of New England in Armidale, which is in New South Wales, Australia. And my thesis was titled Writing Skills for Undergraduate Students in Fiji, Tackling Educational Inequalities and Facilitating Epistemic Access. The thesis was submitted just a week before this, and we are waiting for the examiner's report to come through in probably 6 weeks' time. The thesis looked at the kind of issues and the kind of problems that undergraduate students face when they come to university for the first time, and the kind of academic English they're exposed to, what is their background, how have they come about to reach there, what has been their English access, what resources they have been able to access or not been able to access as well. So the thesis has looked at all of these things, and we have come up with very interesting findings. And as you said, what are you up to? So two main things that I'm doing at the moment. One is trying to change the chapters and work on journal publications. So we've already got one paper out. We've got the second one is under review. The third one we are working on at the moment. And on top of all of that, I'm working on a monograph based on my thesis. The publisher has been in touch from UK, and we're trying to definitely refine the work, because when we are changing it into a monograph, it has to be aligned with the audience that you want to choose, not for examination. So that's a different thing, and just working on that at the moment, and hopefully try and see if I can get some postdocs applications out as well. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to.
Oh, wow. That is a lot to take in. So congratulations on your completion for your PhD.
Thank you so much.
And also congratulations on working on writing for publication with the two papers. One's due to be out soon. So hopefully by the end of this video, we'll have the link at the bottom if you do want to read. Your space is linguism, right?
Linguistics, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Linguistics, yeah. And then in terms of the other papers, well, congratulations. And with is it a book chapter or an entire book?
We are looking at an entire book. So it's it's reducing.
Excitement.
It's rewriting or reducing 8,000 words to, let's say, 40,000. So there's a lot of work that is now going into all of that, and yeah, hopefully at least in 1 year or so I have a book going.
Wow, so congratulations on that, and wow, amazing. I'm loving your journey already, and hopefully we can discuss the book when it comes out.
Yes, that would be fantastic.
So why not? Let's market the book already before it comes out. But in terms of today's session, thank you so much for saying yes. We are going to be answering some questions that have come in from individuals from around the world who are basically inquiring about a PhD or how to apply for a PhD. These are our opinions as well, and also based on work experience in regards to our own personal journeys. So please be kind with your comments. So I guess the first question is, how do I write a research proposal? I think you touched on this before slightly, but the question's still there.
So thank you, Norma. I think this is a general question that I believe anybody who wants to apply for a PhD or even a higher degree research, whether it is MPhil or Masters of whatever research, environmental science degree, whichever the one they choose, you'll all have to come up with a proposal. So as I explained in the last session as well, there are two things here. One is an intent, one is a proposal. And if you're looking at it from the intent point of view, intent is sort of just to get an idea, sort of let an idea run through your potential supervisors so that they can see that, yes, this is some area that aligns with either your university vision of research or with their personal interest of research. So it would not be a very intensive document. An intent would sort of just be about 5 pages, just the introduction there, why you want to do the research, so some research questions can be there, a little bit of literature review, not too detailed, all this. But that's an intent, just to get the idea flowing. But when we look at a proposal, in terms of a proposal, and I would strongly suggest, as soon as you've got your intent out and your supervisors have said, okay, fine, go ahead and do the formal enrollment, you can start in enrolling in the process. I would say that second alone, you start working on a broader proposal, one which when you will submit, you can be ready to get feedback as soon as you submit to the supervisors. So whether you have 2 supervisors, 1, 3, 5, whatever, what the research proposal needs to have is there are about 7 or 8 components that you need to keep in mind. The first one needs to be the introduction. So introduce your topic. Why is your topic interesting, or why should somebody say that, yes, I would like to know more about it. This sounds interesting, I want to know more about it. You need to hit that platform. You can't just say that, this topic has been around for such a long time, no one does research on this. No. You need to make it sound selling point. Why should I look at your research? So that's the introductory bit that you need to highlight. I would normally suggest somebody to put the introduction to at least about 300 to 500 words. Just get the important details out in the proposal, definitely. Moving from there, you can then work on a background. So you can talk about another subtopic that you can have in a proposal is the background of your study. So where is it coming from? If you want to align it with some previous research as well, not the actual literature review, but you're trying to just say that there were people who worked on this and how I'm fitting this into my research, or where this background is coming from. Is there some cases of development that have happened in the last 10 years or so, especially if you're looking at something like peace studies and you're thinking about the war between Ukraine and Russia. For example, there's been a lot of developments, a lot of talks that have happened in 1 year period. I mean, if last year we were having this interview, it might be different from the literature that has come out in the 1 year period. So, these kind of developments that are happening. So think along those lines to fit that in. From the background, just go directly to either you come up with a statement of problem, so you can then discuss about the problem that you have outlined so far, your research is going to outline, talk about that problem. Be as specific as possible. Don't go into making it too broad and trying to change the world in just one go. Sometimes I'm sure you come across people who will say that this is what I want to do and I want to change the world. Well, that's not how a PhD works. You can.
Do you know what? I will put my hands up. When I started my journey as well, I wanted to fix everything. Like I had the kitchen, the bathroom, the 3 bedrooms, everything literally. And it took time to get me there. But now that I'm there, I'm with you on that one. I endorse what you're saying, literally, because it is important. Sorry to interject.
That's exactly. So when you going back to people who are looking at the proposal, if you have a statement of problem, please make it aligned to what is realistic, what can be done, what is the actual problem, and how you plan to go about with it. So when you move from the statement of problem, and Noma, the main thing for anybody who's a potential PhD student or a potential HDR student, let's say, it's very important for you to ensure that there's a flow of ideas. So far, like for example, I've talked about introduction, background of study, statement of problem. There's a flow, like it is just flowing as it is going. So once you have outlined the statement of problem, then you can go on and then highlight your research questions. So what are your research questions? What are you talking about? What are you going to investigate, basically? Be very clear in terms of the vocabulary choice. For example, if you say that does poverty relate to people with high income or blah blah blah? Well, if you're saying does or do or is, you are basically answering a question with yes and no. That as clear as possible. So where's the research? What are you going to research?
Where is it?
You need to rephrase it, you need to word it in such a way that it reads like a question that somebody who picks it up and goes, the panel or whoever picks it up and they go, yeah, this person has got an idea, this person wants to do a research which is worthwhile, and not going to be something that anybody you pick up and say, well, do you and so, and they goes, yes, no, and end of study. So don't put yourself into that. Rethink. There's some really good books to look at. People can get a hold of those books. After the research questions, then they can jump to the research objectives, that how they've aligned, what are the questions you're asking. So then what are your objectives you can have as well. Different universities might have a different template. So just for the audience who are watching, Noma and I are sort of just giving you a general overview of what to sort of expect, or what is sort of expected rather. Then this is not going to be set in stone. You can always check it around. So after the objectives, you can move on to literature review. So ensure that you have some knowledge of the field that you are looking at. Try and read and write at the same time. Try and that's a very, very important tip. I think sometimes people will print off 20 journal papers and they'll be reading 20 papers and they say, after 20, then I will write. No, that's not the way you do it. You will be mixing ideas, you'll be mixing names, you'll be mixing people. So it's advisable what works best for you. Either you choose 3 papers, read and write. Either you choose 5 papers, read and write. Even choose 1 paper, read and write. But don't leave it for a substantial number of papers and then come back to that. So literature review, you can do it in different ways. Some people like to have a thematic literature review, systematic literature review. Some people like to do a periodical one. So for example, they'll start from the time that the field has existed, which I personally prefer. And I like to, if I'm reading a particular literature review on a paper, or even in my own thesis, what I've done is that I've started from the time the field existed, and then I've come to the present day, and then try to take my research and link it from there onwards. Because then whoever is reading, who might not have the background knowledge of your field, an ordinary person who's not in from the linguistics field, even from education, or someone from science can get an idea, oh, this is what he's talking about. So I would strongly suggest that. But again, it goes back to you and your supervisors, how they decide. So have a literature review. Since it's a proposal that you are still trying to get through to your supervisors, I would just recommend probably have a literature review of 1,000 to 1,500 words. Keep it less than 2,000. Right now, don't overwhelm yourself. You have whole 3 years to overwhelm yourself. so just go with, yes. So just go with 1,000, and then after the review comes your methodology section. So in the methodology, you talk about as much as possible about which particular method you have chosen. Justify the reason for that. Why have you chosen that method? Because somebody can come up and say, oh, well, I think you could have used qualitative data in this and made it enriching or something. But you need to put your foot down and say, no, I have chosen mixed method, or I've chosen a case study here, or I've chosen a quantitative, and this is the reason I've chosen. So make a stand for yourself, justify as much as possible. In the same methodology section will also come important information about your data. So what kind of data are you going to produce? How are you going to collect the data? Who are your sample population? So who are the people you are going to be researching with, or researching on? Those are the questions that you need to sort of keep in mind when you're working on that as well. So have that done. It again depends. Sometimes you can have a section on limitations also in the methodology section, where you can also talk about things that are not going to be addressed in your thesis, in your research, and you can probably explain as well why you won't be able to do that. Because one of the things that in my research, a lot of people came and asked that, well, you're talking about language education and you're talking about all of these things, but why don't you interview the teachers or things like that? I said, there's no scope for that. We are specifically looking at the writing skills of undergraduate students. So we are more interested in their problems, their issues, and to have a teaching component will be something you cannot manage by yourself. You need more people into that research if it's to be done one. So you can outline that in the limitations part as well. Next section you can come up with is going to be on ethics. So a very important section, especially if you are dealing with people. Especially if you're dealing with people. If it's a creative practice, then it's a different thing. But if you're dealing with people, you need to ensure how you're going to collect information, or how the information of participants is going to be kept safe, how it's going to be anonymous, how they, all the ethical concerns you can talk about. For example, the consent forms that you're going to get them to sign. And you're going to be very clear that you're not going to pressurize them, or you're not going to tell them that you need to do this because I need a PhD. You can't make it like that. You have to say that this is how it's going to benefit you, or if it doesn't directly benefit you, this is how it's going to benefit the community that you're coming from. So there are 2 or 3 ways to navigate yourself in that aspect as well. So that would be ethical concerns. After ethical concerns, then you can come up with a section that looks at budget. So talk about the things that you need. And again, different universities have got different ways to approach this. So for example, in Australia and in Fiji as well, universities, after your confirmation of candidature, you get a certain allowance that you can use. And a number of universities do that. They give you a certain amount that you can utilize for the 3 years or 4 years of candidature. You just need to provide a breakdown of that in your budget. And sometimes universities are very strict. If it's not in your proposal document, if it's not in the budget, you are not going to be given that because you didn't account for that. So do come up with a section. For example, if you need a recording device, then mention that. If you need some books that you don't need from Interloan, but you actually need it as a copy for yourself because you're going to use it. You cannot be running back and forth to the library to keep renewing it. So if that's the case, you make sure that you have got an allocated amount for that. If you need research assistants, for example, you might need 1 or 2 people to help you with the project. You put that there. And then again, I think earlier I mentioned last year that you need to make sure that you have that particular country's minimum wage put there. So don't think that you can pay somebody $2 an hour when the minimum wage is $15 an hour or $18 an hour.
It just doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So you can put that there, have it all there. And one of the last. Second last thing would be the timeline. And I think, Noma, what I've found recently with timeline is that a friend of mine who's changing from MPhil and going to a PhD. So that sort of, the timeline is sort of the most important bit that people are looking at, the panels are looking at when you think about converting from a master's to a PhD. So make sure that your outline of the time that you're planning to do your research is so clear that you can fit in things and you can also account for unexpected things. So for example, if you're saying, I'm going to give chapter 1 of my thesis in, let's say, May 2024. So don't just put May 2024, you can say between May 2024 to July 2024. Because if you are just saying in that particular month, what if something happens unexpectedly? You had some other deadlines to meet, you were attending a conference presentation and you didn't go through. So it's a tentative timetable, but try to accommodate all these realistic events that can come about as well. And then you will definitely have to have a reference section. So try and see what works best for you. I'm really good with EndNote. I strongly recommend EndNote, but there are people who use Zotero or Mendeley, or even Microsoft has got their own version. So whichever you're comfortable with, you can use the referencing software or just have the references done. Finally, you will have the appendix section. In the proposal, you might not have too many things to put in the appendix because you are still sort of just outlining things that you go along. But it's still, I would say, it's still good to have that. Well, that would be one way of looking at it, Noma. The other thing that I advise strongly is that if you know you are from a different country and you are applying for a PhD in another country, which is probably in another continent, make sure that you go through that university's website and see the proposal requirements that they have, because it also changes from university to university. It also changes within the university from discipline to discipline. So these are things that probably we don't think of, and we might be coming up with our own proposal. Another advice I can give here is, if you don't want to spend too much time looking at the university website, why don't access one of the latest theses in your field from that particular university? That thesis will sort of also have the components that you're looking at. I did the same. I looked up a particular thesis, and then that sort of was my starting point. So whatever I was doing, I was trying to align it to this particular thesis, even though I was just writing a proposal. But it was so helpful. I was able to tick the boxes very easily, or it gave like a template, I would say, that this is what I need to fill in, this is what I'm left. And so it gave me an idea to go about with that. So I hope I've helped people to at least figure out how to go about with the proposal.
Yeah, I think that was well detailed and very, very structured. So just to re-emphasize in regards to your advice, it's all about storytelling. It has to make sense.
Exactly.
In terms of the storytelling, which is the introduction, the background, let's get the context, let's understand what's going on. But ultimately, I think that, the key word here is that you're marketing yourself to your supervisor.
Yes.
And they need to go, this is not interesting, I want this person, essentially. So thank you so much for your advice. And one more thing in regards to the referencing, I know you've touched on it. I think in regards to, so for example, I'm in HR, so I can use Harvard referencing or APA referencing. So in terms of what that means, I will pass the baton back to you. So how does one know which referencing style is required for their field, essentially?
Yes, that's a very good question, and the very simple idea behind it is, one, you can look at different journal papers in your field, and then you'll get an idea that this is particular style that they're using. So, for example, literature, they use a lot of MLA, so they use in literature in the field. But even though you might be coming from the same university, but because of the field, they might be using that. For example, in humanities, we are mostly either using APA or Harvard. Mostly APA, we use APA quite a lot. You can also look at, as I said before, if you go through the university's website, most universities now, what they do is they actually have a section where they run academic skills sort of training or things that you can use when you are not only a HDR student, but also undergraduate, whatever you're doing, you can go through. So they will also outline a particular referencing style that that particular university is using. So it will be very, very good to go through the university websites. And if you are not sure from the beginning, you have looked at the websites, you have looked at the journal papers, you're still not sure, just have a chat with the supervisor. And your supervisor would be the best person to say which one will go with your particular field. So they would have an idea of that as well. And if you are on campus and you talk to your colleagues as well, sometimes they can also suggest, in case you haven't got a particular referencing style to work with, you can talk to them as well, find out what worked best for them as well. But generally, the university websites are a really good place to start off with.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your response. The next question is, how do I prepare for my interview, for my PhD interview?
Okay, so if you have already got a proposal worked out, you have done a proposal, or if you have got your intent sort of sorted, make sure you read it 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much as possible, because the interview panel will already sort of have a look, would have already looked at your intent or your proposal. So they know what you are researching, they know what you are going to use as your method or what is your objective. They will look at it. In the interview, it is not sort of a cross-examination, but they want to get a feel of things from your point of view, why you have decided. Because in writing, you can only say so much, right? But speaking, you are leaving the research. So you are, trying to explain as much as possible. So just ensure that you have read the proposal as much as possible. And after that, be confident that you know what you're talking about. But at the same time, be honest. So for example, if they have put a question and said, oh, but I've seen that you haven't looked at this particular person's work, you haven't looked at Cornell 2019, you didn't look at this person's work. So you can honestly explain that I might have overlooked it. I'm taking a note of this right now. And after this interview, I will make time to go through this person's work. I will, do that. So be honest in that aspect. Don't pretend that, yeah, I looked at that person's work, but I thought it wasn't aligning to mine. I mean, I'm sure the people in the panel, they know, right, what when you're faking it. So don't put yourself into that. So being confident means at the same time being honest in that aspect. Go through the methodology as much as possible, because that's one of the questions that will arise in the interview. You will be asked about the methodology. You will be asked to explain about it, why you have chosen that, or why the participants are going to benefit from your research. That's one of the favorite questions I think people want to look at. That fine, you have selected 30 women to be part of your research, but how are these women going to benefit from your research? Or you have chosen 40 men from the LGBT community, but how are they going to benefit from this? It can be those kind of questions that can come about as well. Another question sometimes that the panel can ask is about the use of software. So for example, if you have said somewhere that you're going to use SPSS, or you're going to use NVivo, you're going to use Qualtrics, or there's billion softwares that exist, right? So they can be coming back and asking you, how proficient are you in this? How competent, sorry, are you in this? So you can explain how much you already know and how much sort of you need help with, because universities do provide trainings in those kind of areas. So you can explain that in the interview as well. So be very clear on the things that you want. But most importantly, ensure that you know the objectives in and out. Why are you doing? Why are you doing? Because they will definitely start off by asking you to introduce your topic and the research problem, or introduce by explaining how you got to do this particular research, or why are you interested in this research. But if you don't know the objectives, you're going